Well, hello model car fans. Welcome to the Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Ral, and this week I'm going to feature a build here of a 69 Dodge Charger 500. Now, when they went to race the Charger, they've been racing it in NASCAR for a number of years, and when they redid the body for 68, they found that it wasn't quite as competitive as they hoped it would be. So they went to the drawing board and they were like, what do we do to fix this? How can we make this car more competitive? And they were looking at some of the aerodynamics because they were like, well, there's a lot of things that they can do to the body, because that seems to be where the problem is, where the 66, 67 body did much better, but that had a flush grille and it was a bit more of a fastback roof, and the styling cues on the 68, which made it more wildly popular for everybody to buy, and the Coke bottle shape to the car, but the grille in the back window created some turbulent air, and they were having problems with it because of that. And they're like, well, we need to make this car a bit sleeker and a bit smoother. So they brainstormed some ideas on how do we make it better. Well, they came up with the idea to use the Coronet, the 68 Coronet's grille, which this was late in 68. If they moved that forward and flushed it to the fenders, it worked a little bit better aerodynamically. And then they went and they put in a plug and flush mounted the rear glass, made a special rear window. And both of those helped quite a bit. But on the racetrack, that was 3 to 7 mile an hour difference on the super speedways. But they thought that might be enough. But it was getting late in the season, so the 69s were coming out and they had to make it legal for racing. So the rules in 69 stated that they had to make 500 examples for production use to make these modifications legal to update their car. So they got to work on it. They got Creative Industries involved, and they were pulling 69 Charger RTs right off the assembly line and doing the modifications to them. They flush mounted the grille, did those modifications to it, and then added the moldings here to the A-pillar, and then also did the body modifications to the rear plug, flush mounted the rear window, and mounted the new rear window, and then they sent them off to get painted. Now, one of the interesting things that I've seen with some of the cars and heard stories is the first ones, they were pulling RTs right off the assembly line at Hamtramck. Some of those RTs were striped Elite cars and they had the RT emblem right here on the quarter panel. The striped cars didn't have the actual emblem, so there were no holes in the quarter panel, and they just put the stripe on them. So all of the Charger 500s had the special stripe that said 500, but no actual emblems other than there's a tiny little one that's supposed to be right here on the taillight for the number 500. So when they were done doing this, some of the RTs that they pulled off the assembly line had the emblem here, so Creative Industries just took the emblem off and let it in the holes. So there's a couple of cars that during restoration, they had the original quarter panels, that they found the RT holes actually there, and they were kind of surprised to do that, but they were converted RTs. And technically, when they were announced, when Dodge announced them to the dealers, they said every option from the 69 Charger RT was going to be available on the Charger 500, so they could spec them up the way they wanted, but there was going to be a very limited run. They were only going to make 500 of them. The official numbers, the most common number you hear quoted was that they made 392 of them that were made and sold to the public. Some say that as many as 540 were made, but many of the last ones were converted into Daytonas because these modifications were on the Daytona as far as the roof and the pillars here. But they did more modifications to the front end and the wing, but that's a whole nother story. But when they were focusing on this car and orders were coming in, there were only 2 options that were not available, that were available on the regular 69 RT that were not available on the Charger 500. One was the vinyl top, the other one was the trunk mounted luggage rack, which makes a lot of sense because this trunk is shortened and modified to be the way it is because of the fastback roof, and the trunk no longer goes into it. And then of course with all the work that they just did to the roof and the vinyl top would kind of cover that up or change it, and they wouldn't have had to do all of that work. And after putting the work in, now they have to make a special vinyl top, so no factory vinyl tops and no trunk luggage racks on these cars. But every single option from the 69 Charger RT was supposedly available in these, and a lot of them were pretty well loaded. The only engines available were the 440 and the Hemi. the initial introduction was showing that all of the Charger 500s were going to be Hemi powered. That was like the very first thing that the dealers were told, and then that changed. They were all pretty much 440 powered, and very few were actually made Hemis. I read recently that there was only 15 Hemi 4-speed cars. Didn't really see how many total Hemi cars were produced, but even production numbers are kind of vague. Like I said, 392 cars officially sold. That's the most accepted number. I guess that were completed as Charger 500s and sold as Charger 500, so that's the accepted number. So when it came to this car and this build, this is an MPC build. If you saw my other video, I also did a Charger 500 based on the Revell kits, and all I really used was just the grille from this car. But before those cars came out, the Revell kits, all you had was your MPC offerings, which those are okay. This is actually my favorite version of them. You know, it's been re-released many times, retooled and modified and edited. But this is actually my favorite version. But this version right here, this is actually one of the last releases, which had the wrong hood. I did have a few of the older release, which was the initial one right here. We'll move this out. There you go. So you can see the box art of this one. This is the like 1980s issue. And this one's actually sealed, believe it or not. This is from '87. And I wasn't looking for another one. I just stumbled upon a sealed one. So I bought this one sealed. And for 20 bucks, I couldn't pass it up, which I wasn't looking for it. But when it comes to the MPC Chargers, this is my favorite one. Even though I built this one, this is the later issue, and then I've ended up with another of the early issue. The main difference between these two is this hood right here. This is the actual 69 hood. A lot of the later kits and a ton of the Dukes of Hazzard kits have the 70 hood when they have the Daytona. So every time I run into the right hood, like I found this one at a swap meet and I picked this one up. So that's kind of why if it comes up, you can kind of see a shade difference here because this was painted later, but this one was built a long time ago. So we'll get back to this here. This one, there's a lot of work involved in cleaning it up and making it a little bit better. Like I said, the Revell monogram kits are light years ahead of this one, but you can build it pretty nicely. As you can tell, this one actually came out really nice, and I'm really pleased with it, even though I built this one 15-20 years ago. I think this one was done right before the Revell ones came out, and you know, you still couldn't get a Charger 500. This is really technically the only option, but there's the 500 decal on the back, and then the rear end taillights, and you know, I hand painted the chrome lip here. There really isn't one on this model kit. And speaking of some of that stuff, this one, the later issue, doesn't have 500 on it. I'll show you a body from the yellow molded kit. But there's a lot of work involved in cleaning this up. There's some work that I did to filling in the dimple that's right here, and it's still kind of there, but not as bad. And just clean that up. The gas cap, I used decals right here, which those are from a Keith Marks set, along with the Hemi emblem on the fender. The molded in emblem is way too big. And one of the things, if you notice, I got all 4 wheel opening moldings. I've seen a number of these where they are built. Now to do this, the front wheels are missing that wheel opening molding. The rear ones are there, but they're very faint. So I sanded them completely off and added strip styrene and then foiled it. The front is just all right from the kit, all done pretty nicely, and cleans up really good. And then of course, you know, the kit comes with a Hemi, so got to put the Hemi in it. I did have the air cleaner chromed. It's not in chrome on this car. But I didn't do much else detailing, just painted the entire engine compartment the way it should be. And then detail painted the wires and stuff. And put Magnum 500s on it. And these are Revell Redline tires. And of course the underside, just nice and cleanly detailed. Nothing super fancy, and silver paint on the exhaust tips. And she came out really nice. I mean, it's a pretty nice detailed kit as far as cleaning it up and doing the best you can with it. And it's got a nice interior, which this is all black. I went all black on it, 4-speed and everything. I could probably do a better job showing you all the kit contents and details with it. Alright, so here's a look at the body. It's kind of hard to focus on it because for some reason it's having trouble focusing on the yellow here, so we'll let it focus for a second. But as you can see, there's no wheel lip molding at all on this front wheel lip, and there's a couple of dips in it. There's the Hemi emblem that's on the door, which is very faint and very big. It's pretty good size. And then there's the rear moldings, which are on there. Those ones come out okay if you foil them. There's the Charger emblem on the C-pillar. And of course the dimples I was talking about. This one's really bad, and there's two of them there. And I'd filled them in, but I didn't do quite as good of a job. And then last right there, if you can see right above my thumb there, there's the 500 emblem. It's very faint and it can vanish easily. But it's only on this 87 issue. The later issue that I did, that's gone. But they did a lot of updates and changes to this kit throughout the years. So when you see these, you know, there's a lot to go from when it comes to building them. So they take quite a bit of work. They can be done nicely and presentable, but I've stayed away from a lot of them because this one's my favorite issue. I really enjoyed building this one and liked the way the looks of it, and took my time and cleaned it up as best as I can. So she looks pretty good, and I'm really happy with the way she presents herself. But when I compare it to the Revell version I did of the Charger 500, so if you want to see that, please look up that video, and I'll put a link at the end of it from this one to that one, so you can see that one as well if you haven't seen that. But I enjoyed building them both, and I really like this Charger, the Charger 500. It's just unique enough and strange enough, and for some reason, for me, I'm not a real big fan of the 69 Charger split grill. I like the 68 grill and the 70 grill. It's just personal preference. But that's pretty much it for this one here. So thank you for tuning in, subscribing, and watching. I really appreciate it. You guys, you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next weekend.